Coming up in this episode, anticipates and manages risks effectively, a problem-solving and decision-making behaviour. Hello again, welcome back and thank you for downloading this edition of High Performance Pilot, the show dedicated to improving our performance as aviation professionals. To do that, I embrace the core competency matrix and the behaviours contained within it, the knowledge, the skills and the attitudes, giving you the best chance of maximising your performance. Building on the previous episode's behaviour, we return to problem solving and decision making, the competency all others lead to. Being effective requires proficiency in the competencies of leadership and teamwork, communication and knowledge.
Part 1. What is this behaviour?
Anticipating and managing risk strikes at the very heart of how we safely operate aircraft. It goes beyond reacting to immediate challenges. Anticipating risk involves a continuous, forward-looking assessment of potential threats, followed by an analysis of the level that risk represents. It requires a proactive mindset and an understanding of all aspects of the operational environment and how they interact with each other. Once anticipated, the risks need to be managed by putting strategies in place to reduce them to acceptable levels.
Part 2. Why do we need it?
We operate within a complex and dynamic environment where multiple variables have an impact on flight safety. Weather changes, technical malfunctions, air traffic complexities, human factors and any number of other threats contribute to an ever-changing risk landscape. If we are to successfully manage this environment, threats need to be identified and the risks they pose quantified, and strategies put in place to avoid or mitigate them.
Part 3. How can we achieve proficiency?
Having knowledge of the behaviours is one thing, but the real skill lies in understanding how to put them into practice. So how do we become proficient in anticipating and managing risks effectively? First up, we need to understand how to quantify risk. To keep it simple, the level of risk is a product of the chance of the threat happening and the severity of the consequences should it do so. Low chance of occurrence and negligible consequences, low risk. High chance of occurrence and significant consequences, high risk. This analysis is the domain of the safety department when predicting risk to the operation or analysing events that have already occurred. But this is what we as pilots are subconsciously doing continuously during flight operations. It is how we understand what level of risk a particular threat presents to us. Next on the list, display proficiency in the competency of leadership and teamwork. There are a number of behaviours within this competency that help create an environment conducive to threats being identified. Creating an atmosphere of open communication and participation encourages collaboration and ensures all team members feel comfortable providing their input, whilst being open and honest about thoughts, concerns and intentions, plus involving others in planning, means there is more chance all of the potential threats are identified. Moving on, place threat identification front and centre of your thought process. And the ideal time to do this is during the briefings we conduct throughout the operational day. This is where the atmosphere we've created with effective leadership and teamwork facilitates the process of identifying, quantifying and mitigating threats to the flight. However, because of the dynamic nature of flight operations, this is a continuous process, and we need workload management skills to avoid distraction. And finally, develop strategies to avoid or mitigate risk. The easiest way to reduce risk is to avoid it. For example, there are thunderstorms on your flight path during the cruise. If you fly into them, you expose the aircraft to a number of threats and significant risk. Identifying these threats and avoiding them by rerouting the aircraft reduces the risk to negligible amounts. If a threat cannot be avoided, then we must create mitigation strategies to reduce the risk. Let's say there is a late change in runway due to a developing tailwind. The threat is an unstable approach due to poor preparation. We can't avoid the runway change, but we can mitigate the risk by asking to hold and creating time to reprogram and brief the new approach.
Part 4. The threats.
Today's behaviour is all about understanding the potential threats and errors present during our operational day, allowing us to avoid or mitigate them. Here are some of the threats incurred when we lack proficiency in this episode's behaviour. Increased incident rates. A lack of proficiency can lead to a higher incidence of operational issues and accidents. Without a proactive approach, we will find ourselves ill-equipped to handle unforeseen challenges. Safety compromises. Inability to effectively manage risks may result in compromised safety standards. This can erode the confidence of passengers, impact the reputation of airlines, and, in extreme cases, lead to catastrophic consequences. Operational disruptions. Crew who struggle with risk anticipation may experience frequent operational disruptions. This can lead to flight delays, cancellations, and logistical challenges, affecting both airlines and passengers.
Part 5. An example.
Here is a simple and everyday example of anticipating and managing risk effectively. Consider a scenario where a crew is flying to a destination with a crosswind approaching the aircraft's limit. Proficiency in this behaviour would demand the crew consider the threats associated with a normal go-around, a wind shear go-around, a balked approach, and a runway excursion. They would brief themselves on the various procedures for the multiple go-around scenarios, along with the handling techniques for the landing itself. Preparation would also be made should a diversion become necessary. By anticipating and managing the risks, they have reduced them to acceptable levels.
Part 6. The key takeaways.
Anticipating and managing risks effectively is a key skill to safe operation. Proficiency in this competency requires effective leadership and teamwork. Threat identification is a continuous process requiring a proactive approach. Briefings are an ideal time to identify threats, quantify risks, and put strategies in place to avoid or mitigate them. So that's the behaviour of anticipates and manages risks effectively from the competency, problem solving and decision making. I hope today's episode encourages you to engage with the core competencies, and maybe you've heard something to incorporate into your own operation.
High Performance Pilot has an ultimate aim: to stimulate interest in the core competencies and inspire you to seek them out, apply them to take control of your development, and further improve your effectiveness as a pilot.
Each week, one behaviour from one competency. We'll break it down and provide tips and advice on how to make it a strength in your operation. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast and visit High Performance Pilot on YouTube. Join me next week. If you wish to contribute or ask a question, please email me at highperformancepilot@gmail.com.